Hello from Thessaloniki. First of all, I would like to thank Irene Mundraki and Ioanna Katsaru and their team for giving me the opportunity to join you virtually in this annual meeting that Ioanna has the courage and the enthusiasm to keep it alive. And I wish Ioanna and her team all the best with what they are trying to do in order to promote theater and Greek theater in particular in New York area and across the US. We bear no gifts to Athens saying that our world is undergoing radical changes at an accelerating speed, changes that transform industries, reshape consumer demands and taste, changes that challenge conventional logics, issues of gender and justice, sexual mores, politics of identity, established dichotomies, and certainly education. Mastering content knowledge is no longer sufficient in the age of the Google. Changes are intimidating for some, while promising for others. The world is constantly changing, yet at no other time in recent history has the world experienced so many radical and slippery shifts that require caution and serious analysis. Everything seems to be in a state of flux and uncertainty. Innovation, digitalization, interconnectedness, and technological progress move fast. In fact, so fast that people are left with little time to understand what is going on, to wonder, to seriously reflect on values and practices, to reconsider, even to regret. What becomes obvious is that the remnants from the past abound in today's society, remnants of structures that were designed for a world that no longer exists. Clearly, it is no longer possible to live as we have been living up to the present time. And since the entire fabric of life is drastically changing, the life of people and their arts will somehow have to be redesigned, replanned, or at least rethought. This is no news, of course, especially for theater, an art so accustomed to words like crisis and change. However, since the advent of the postmodern theater, in its broadest sense, has been going through an intense period of readjustments and adaptations, which has been further intensified by the devastating pandemic experience. With the world economy in shambles, Greek theater in particular is now called on to radically reconsider new strategies for navigating its survival and new paradigms for solving problems, and to promote ideas and lead change with inspiring, supportive, and visionary frontliners. And who is better fit really to provide these cutting-edge paradigms than the young? Those who were born in the heart of the more recent crises that have plagued the world and more violently have plagued Greece, economically, socially, technologically, ethically, and culturally. Crises that deeply affected the ways the nation and its people see themselves and project themselves to others. Having experienced firsthand the impact of this crisis, our young artists seem better equipped to recognize the nature of what is really happening and effectively face the obstacles of this moment of transition and multiple crossings of borders, genres, genders, roles, morals, aesthetics, and definitions. They are better prepared, or allow me to say, rather readier to raise questions about the kind of theater needed in contemporary settings. Readier to ask how meaning is shaped and by whom and for whom. readier to re-examine the role of the Greek or any other artist, for that matter, in a world of displacements, repositionings, and rediscoveries. In short, to wonder what is real and what is fake, what is ethical and what is unethical, what are we, what are they, and where do we and our arts go from here. It goes without saying that taking into consideration all the changes that the internet culture and the traumatic pandemic experience have brought, theater strategies have to change if one wants a promising future for Greek theater as a cultural and ethical force. New artistic models for the representation of ideas, new ways of activating audiences and their senses, new strategies for reinventing subjectivity and nationhood. In short, new channels of creation and communication, channels which would help us look at things as if seeing for the first time. Let me remind you of Brecht here, who says, reality changes. In order to represent it, modes of representation must change as well. Nothing comes out of nothing. The new comes from the old, but that is why it is new. What one expects from theater, and Greek theater in particular, is to interrogate the way in which we receive and translate information in everyday life. And this it can do as long as it stays close to reality, as long as it understands reality, as long as it sees in reality what we do not normally see, and as long as it understands its own nature, its own role, and its own potential. Post-pandemic Greek theater needs artists who are not only good talkers, but also good listeners. Listening requires enthusiasm, commitment, energy, and patience to capture the essence of what is going on and then transform this experience into meaningful art. Listening is a form of action. All this, of course, is not easy and never has been. A crisis of any sort is not easily handled, for it creates a rupture between the individual and the collective conception of the nation and its morals, a sort of an intimidating zone in which people are caught between a failed past and a frightening future. A buffer zone filled with questions rather than answers. The problem with post-pandemic Greek theater is that it has to face an economic and an immense moral crisis. From the comforting certainties of modernism, from the lies and failed promises of the past, Greek theater has violently passed to the discomforting openness of postmodernism and post-truth that call for painful redefinitions, painful self-questioning, and new poetics and ethics of representation. The days when Greek artists and politicians posited socialism as the ethical and artistic alternative to the free market economy by championing an overt politics of content seem quite old-fashioned. This is a new world we are now living in, and if we want as theater people to be part of it, we have to get rid of what failed us in the past and figure out new, healthier, and more flexible strategies to realize it on stage. The exclusive either or of Greek modernist politics is not enough to answer complicated questions which relate identity politics with an identity crisis. Who am I? Who are they? and what is real. In short, what is at stake right now in Greek theater is the very mentality and mode of representation. How to organize the world according to a diversified notion of norms, logics, and structural limitations that would enable society to be conceived differently and in difference. And this, I repeat, demands a new stage aesthetics good enough to generate a dialogue with tensions, ruptures, and conflicts in the national fabric, to explore paradoxes, ambiguities, and complexities around issues of identity, tradition, etc., and if need be, to help invent the nation or invent and construct a different we. Theater, after all, is not only about making poetics, but also of making sense, that is, hermeneutics. If one looks at the hundreds of young people who entered the local theater market in the last few years, it is impossible to categorize, let alone adequately present what is going on, because those involved do not form a coherent entity, nor do they have the same quality and talent. Their theater spectrum is wide open, uneven, and porous, and it's very natural. It traverses customary, institutional, and generic lines, each with different needs and focus. What I think, however, links them together and somehow makes their unblocked study possible is their desire to explore new ways of communicating their ideas to the people. All these young people seem to understand that the old methods and the old mentalities will not help them capture the diversity of the nation as it shifts and changes through the impact of illegal immigration, recession, global antagonism, impoverishment, collapse of the welfare system, and collapse of ethics. The art of more questioning artists is mostly situated on the boundary of what we know and do not know, of what we think is theater or not theater, of what is out there on stage and what out here in the auditorium. New spatial temporal structures are introduced to contest understandings of the historical heritage, its failures, and its promises. Whether drawing of folk traditions, popular culture, old texts, prose or poetry, mainstream or radical theater, epic theater or dramatic theater, the goal of the more committed and resourceful artists is to keep theater central to the public discourse and communal interaction, not as a commodity, but as a necessary thing, as a channel which could lead to a better understanding of the world and its histories. By breaking standard norms, by entering uncharted territories, by disrupting boundaries, disciplines, and senses, by refusing to position the spectators outside or opposite the theatrical situation, the more talented of our artists aspire to bring to the people's attention issues that matter, issues that have to do with their life, as well as how they conceive the idea of a homeland. Despite the generally grim atmosphere, let us remember that in all crises lie great opportunities. In our darkest moments, new ideas and innovations give beacons of light. All we need is a glow of great ideas, a spark of the future. And the economic and moral depression in Greece, with whatever evils it has brought along, provides a rich field for self-reflection, a terrain for the production of a new sense of things, of people, of human relations, of companionship, aspirations, and of course, for the production of theater that would be suitable not only for the needs of the people and the potential of the nation, but also for the new realities, this new and multinational world the world has created. The arguments, the issues at stake are complex, but what is required is a forward-looking energy, a jump into a new postmodern age. For this to happen, our artists must understand that to reimagine the nation's artistic tomorrow, they have to radically reimagine, among other things, their here and now, the real of themselves, of their art, and the iconography of the place they live in. The economic and moral depression of the last few years has given us thus far few works written or staged to get very excited about. What we got mostly was a theater of undigested loans, a theater hastily conceived and hastily executed, mostly angry or pretentiously postmodern and oppositional to the established social norms. It remains to be seen, however, whether this particular cultural moment would eventually produce lasting art. It remains to be seen whether theater can be an effective alternative to the superiority of the reality that high technology has created. It remains to be seen whether theater matters at all in a country with so many wounds. Thank you very much. And I wish all of you out in New York all the best and all good news around theater. Goodbye from Thessaloniki.